Tonight, on A Turning Point, we look back on the past 6 months, how George Floyd's death has sparked an awakening in our country and a movement for social justice reform. From education's digital divide in Cleveland to what it's like to be a Black police officer, and how poetry is used as a healing power for all. Plus, how global superstar LeBron James is using his platform to make change. Those stories and more tonight on a special edition of Front Row, A Turning Point, next. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Front Row, A Turning Point. I'm Sarah Shookman along with Russ Mitchell. Jimmy is off tonight. Tonight we will look back at the topics and stories we have shared with you over the past 7 months. 3 News started A Turning Point to shine a light on social injustice and to help with solutions to living in a better, more equitable world.
May 25th is a day that many Americans will not forget. That's the day that George Floyd was murdered. That day sparked change through protests, conversation, the way we think, and how we move forward.
Our nation is hurting right now. The country primed for a revolution, a transformation. As George Floyd struggled for air before he died, his last 3 words, "I can't breathe," have become a rallying cry. Protests, both peaceful and violent, are opening our eyes. But George Floyd is not the only face of this movement. Right here in Cleveland, Tamir Rice was shot and killed by a Cleveland police officer in November 2014 after carrying an airsoft gun. He was only 12 years old. There are so many others. We say their names: Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland. And the list goes on and on throughout history. But now is the time for action. And now that the world is listening, the soul-stirring message from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. still rings true.
And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again.
The pandemic has forced many families to rely on the internet to stay connected to work, school, and one another. Many of Cleveland's poorest neighborhoods, including those with the highest concentrations of people of color, lack internet service altogether. This is a long-standing problem known as the digital divide. The gap between households with high-speed internet and those without it threatens the future of as many as 40% of city residents who could be left further behind in the pandemic. Mark Namick dove into this topic back in September.
I have to turn off my Wi-Fi and use mobile data instead of the actual Wi-Fi because it doesn't work. I can't do anything when a regular Wi-Fi is on.
17-year-old Kendall Smith, among the more than 30% of Cleveland residents without home internet or reliable high-speed service. Sharing a household with 6 people, including her grandmother, she struggles to stay connected as a student at Cleveland's Science and Technology High School, MC² STEM.
For my internship, we do Zoom calls, and I was kicked out of one because I had bad connection. And so it's difficult to have this internship and have to do everything online.
The problem, not our generation's making. It rests with phone and cable companies and undemanding elected officials. One of 2 main broadband players in Cleveland today, AT&T successfully lobbied state lawmakers in 2007 to allow it to compete with cable companies, which at the time had exclusive rights for services in cities. AT&T promised competition would be good for residents, but when it introduced a new wave of fiber broadband technology in 2008,
they skipped some neighborhoods.
Glenville, Huff, Fairfax, South Collinwood, and Clark Fulton, among others. Bill Callahan of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance has been monitoring internet access in Cleveland for 24 years. He says the result is digital redlining, a reference to an old discriminatory practice in which banks and insurance companies ignored inner-city neighborhoods.
We called it that for a reason, because somebody had made an explicit decision not to make that investment in certain neighborhoods because of their poverty, or the percent of people who are poor. Unfortunately, that also means that it was basically the people of color neighborhoods.
Old maps defining redlining resembled new maps developed by the Alliance showing neighborhoods with little or no internet access. AT&T has since made additional investments in the city, including adding fiber cables on poles in some of the poorest neighborhoods.
But they don't have the other equipment in the neighborhoods that would allow them to provide that fast fiber service to homes. and therefore they've still got 2004, 2005 level service.
One emerging alternative is the nonprofit Digital Sea, which is building a network of wireless access to connect those left behind. It's using a ring of antennas placed on buildings around the city to offer 50 megabits of speed for $20 a month. It's going door to door to help people understand why they need Wi-Fi.
It's about the kids, the seniors, and those in the middle we call the strivers that are underemployed and just have to become part of this digital economy.
More than 1 in 4 households in Cleveland lack any type of internet connection, making it the 4th worst connected big city in the country. Now, if there's a silver lining to the pandemic, it might be this. It has awakened elected officials and civic leaders to the troubling effects of the digital divide. Mark Namick, 3 News.
We switch from education now to our law enforcement. A journey to becoming a police officer isn't easy for anyone. Add being black, and the potential barriers can be even greater. Tiffany Tarpley shared this story with us back in July.
With 12 years on the Cleveland Police Force, Sergeant Vincent Montague is a decorated law enforcement officer. Although there are ups and downs, he says it is the best decision he's ever made.
So I didn't know what God wanted me to do in life, but I knew I wanted to do something to help others so they don't have to experience it.
That it is racism.
Some people don't want to accept that racism exists, but I know it does because I experienced it when I was in middle school.
No one forgets that moment, that experience. But for Montague, it's been his driving force from the beginning. It wasn't until his years at the historically black Tuskegee University that he knew he wanted to become a police officer.
We learned a lot about the civil rights movement. We learned a lot about the activism that took place then. And I felt that in being involved in the system could be a way to implement change.
Bachelor's degree in hand, a paralegal at the time, Montague was persuaded to take the civil service test. He did so in Cleveland, but it wasn't an easy decision.
It's the good old boy system. You don't think you could, you got to know someone and get the job. There's all those things that you think, but those things aren't true. But just being an African-American man, those are things that you hear.
And that racism he experienced as a child did not go away.
There's times when I wanted to quit when I got into this career. I cried with my parents, going through the academy.
Even now, it is real. But there is no giving up. You see, his father is a pastor. He grew up in the church, and it's his faith that keeps this admittedly imperfect man strong.
When I'm going through a bad day, I pray. When I'm in the streets and I'm scared, I pray to God, because police officers, we go through a lot. We see a lot. And I pray for that strength. When I have bad dreams and nightmares, I ask God for help.
The 37-year-old who earned his master's degree a few years ago is on a mission to help others. Montague is the president of the Black Shield Police Association. He is pushing for police reform, as well as rebuilding of trust between the community and law enforcement. He is a husband and father of 2 young boys, 8 and 5 years old.
And once I had kids and seeing, especially the George Floyd incident, I'm like, I can't accept the culture anymore that we're defending things that are wrong, because I have kids that are going to grow up and I do not want them to be the next George Floyd.
Tiffany Tarpley, 3 News.
Still to come tonight, Jasmine Monroe shows us the powerful movement happening through poetry. The incredible story of local poets trying to right the right. That's when A Turning Point returns. This special edition of Front Row, A Turning Point, continues here in Channel 3. As we talk about this turning point in history, we want to shed some light on some local leaders who are making a difference.
In June, Jasmine Monroe shared this story with us, a look at how poetry and the power of words can help us all come together.
I, too, sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am American.
Like the iconic poet Langston Hughes, Caillou Allen is a young black man growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Though nearly a century divides them, they share the same pain.
Yeah, I'm just another student, another voice who has something to say about what's going on. I believe to be silent about injustice is to be a part of it.
Allen is a recent graduate of the class of 2020, a promising future, shaped in part by his participation in a local poetry troupe called the Distinguished Gentlemen of Spoken Word.
Living in the fire, but I will not burn. Living in the fire, but I will not burn.
If you weren't a part of this program, do you think you would have learned the same morals and the same stance of brotherhood?
I wouldn't have leadership skills. I wouldn't have a lot of things had it not been for this group.
The Gentlemen are a group of young men ages 8 to 18 led by Honeybell Bay, the official poet laureate of Cuyahoga County, an accomplished performer, minister, and community leader. She knows firsthand the power of words.
I am the G-O-A-T, the P-O-E-T.
P-O-E-T. Power over emotional trauma. Sadly, there's still more than enough of that to go around.
That if you are human, you have felt the trauma of these past couple of weeks. The only weapon I have been using is the weapon I always use, and that's the power of the pen.
Every little black girl needs to remind herself that she is the prize.
That power perhaps more poignant than ever.
From COVID to crisis to chaos, national pain, national rage, peace and justice, they've got to be the players on this stage. And I'm strange fruit, but I'm trying to write a new page. When it's not the water hose, but pepper spray. And we're still calling out the name Freddie Gray and Tamir Rice and Sandra Bland and Tanisha Anderson and Oscar Grant and Alton Sterling and Mike Brown and Eric Gardner and Walter Scott and Breonna Taylor. And this is a conversation we can't avoid. This is so much bigger than Floyd. COVID, crisis, chaos. A nation is screaming for peace and just us.
Her poem hitting very close to home for me, and no doubt countless others.
I don't even have. I don't have. I have a brother who lives in Chicago, so I think it could be anyone. Send him off to college and hope and pray that he comes back home.
Like never before, not just for me, but for people, period. It's not a time to be muted. Now, like never before, even when it hurts, you have to write it out, or where you write the right.
The power of words in a moment of change, resonating in one community and beyond.
Poetry can unite us all, and the power of community can unite us all. And you don't have to look like me, you just have to love like me. And if you love like me, that unites us all.
Some powerful words there. Next, on a turning point, a virus taking a devastating toll on communities of color and a divide that follows generations of inequality, lack of access, and racism. Is this devastating pandemic a turning point in a long history of health disparity? We'll take a look after the break. Welcome back. This special edition of Front Row, A Turning Point, continues now. Last month, our focus was shining a light on race and health care. COVID cases are at record numbers, both nationally and right here in Northeast Ohio. And some studies show the pandemic is hitting minority communities especially hard.
You have probably heard the term healthcare disparity, but do you really know what it means? If you think it's about access to care, you are partially right. But that's just 1/5 of the problem. Our senior health correspondent, Monica Robbins, explains it all and why it matters.
Racism is a public health issue, and healthcare disparity is the difference between one person's health outcome versus another. But access to doctors, that's just 20% of the problem. Wellness is dictated by other factors, too.
It's education, it's quality of housing,
It's income, it's whether or not you have a park on your street, it's whether or not you have a vacant house on your street.
In fact, your life expectancy depends on your zip code. The Center for Community Solutions studied Ohio neighborhoods. In Cuyahoga County, the difference can be decades within a couple miles.
There's a spread between the highest life expectancy neighborhood and the lowest life expectancy neighborhood of 23 years. And what's wild is that in Cuyahoga County, those census tracts are very close together.
Relating to healthcare, research shows systemic racism is a fact, regardless of socioeconomic status.
Black members of our community, even who have higher rates of education and higher income, who still experience these health disparities.
Cleveland's main hospitals are located in neighborhoods of concern, so they're trying to be part of the solution. Cleveland Clinic set up programs to help educate and then hire future nurses, as well as other critical positions.
For every additional dollar that you earn, you live longer. Your quality of life is better.
Another issue, access to healthy food.
There are people living in our neighborhood that shop at a gas station and a corner store, and that's unacceptable because as healthcare professionals, we know food is medicine.
The clinic partnered with Meijer and earlier this year delivered thousands of pounds of food to nearby neighborhoods, but then took it a step further and are now planning to build a grocery store where residents say they need it.
We are excited. We are very excited, and we're going to create 40 jobs there for residents. So this is huge. It's huge.
It's a step in the right direction, but there's far more work left to do. Monica Robbins, 3 News.
Up next, we all know that LeBron James is one of the greatest players in the NBA. We'll tell you how the son of Akron continues to use his powerful platform to influence and help people right here in Northeast Ohio and all over the world. Stay with us.
As this special edition of Front Row at Turning Point continues, we turn to professional sports and the powerful platform of a global icon.
Of course, LeBron James is one of the greatest NBA players of all time. He's a kid from Akron, just like Sarah Schuckman. And off the court, he's become a voice for people. In fact, earlier today, Time Magazine named him 2020's Athlete of the Year. The 4-time NBA champion was influential in getting out the vote and backed his fellow athletes to speak about issues such as racism and social justice.
And no one can forget, especially those kids from Akron, about the work he's doing there, helping kids with his I Promise program and school. Jim Donovan shared this story with us in August, how the son of Akron is influencing change in a positive way.
The Cleveland Cavaliers select LeBron James.
Way back when, LeBron James came into the NBA right out of Akron St. Vincent St. Mary High School, and fans flocked to see him play. And they also waited to hear him speak, and he was criticized for saying so little. Was it fair to come down so hard on LeBron? Absolutely not. He was a kid, you know, the kid from Akron. And in actual years, he was a teenager trying to navigate his own new life. But all of that has changed. And it changed after he left Cleveland for the first time and played for the Miami Heat. LeBron James became a champion on the court and found his voice. He was a man.
He made the right decision for on the court, but he also made the right decisions for off the court because he needed to grow up a little bit.
The neighborhood slang of Trayvon Martin in Florida by George Zimmerman, that's when LeBron first spoke. Not in words, but in this picture, with his Heat teammates all wearing the hooded sweatshirts. His words would come later at the ESPY Awards in a strong message.
We all have to do better.
His voice continues to be heard. Once considered a silent star, now he never ducks a hot issue. LeBron's most important social impact has come right in his own hometown. The LeBron James Family Foundation is his greatest piece of work in community. It all started by just giving kids bicycles, but then a chance to learn, an education. He asked kids and their families to make a promise to be accountable, and if they would do that, he would be there for them.
To have the structure, to have the support system that I have from my hometown allows me to continue to do what I do on my personal side. So, you know, my family is everything. You know, my personal family to my extended family here with these kids and the foundation. So it's all working in the right way.
The I Promise School is now open and flourishing, and when he visits and sees what he's built, he absolutely melts, maybe even more than he did the day of the Cavs championship parade. And when he watches soon his I Promise kids receive their college degrees, well, what a feeling that will be. And now the foundation has even grown more. They've built a village, housing for those who need it.
I think with LeBron James, there's no end line. Every day we're supposed to get up and see how we can work harder and be better. So I would count on more things coming from the LeBron James Family Foundation.
So where will this all go? LeBron's basketball days will come to an end at some point, and when he looks back, he'll see that he did become one of the greatest players of all time. He's a great father, something he never had himself. But most importantly, he's won the respect of people so that when he speaks, we listen.
His impact off the court is going to be far greater than anything he accomplishes on the court. I wholeheartedly believe that.
And what a statement that is. Well, that's all the time we have for A Turning Point tonight. Thank you for letting us share these stories now and throughout the year with you. A Turning Point will return next year with new topics to share.
We leave you tonight with a song titled Quarantine that was written and performed for Channel 3 back in June. Enjoy, and thanks for watching.